it where the talk line is, upper left. You click on to talk, you click off to turn the mic over to someone else. There are 4 little boxes across the top left just under your name. They are duplicated on the screen before you right now. The first icon lets you insert an emoticon by your name to show you are interacting with the content tonight. These actually help presenters know you are with us. The next one lets you step away during the course. Just click on it and it shows you away. If you are earning credit, it is very important to remember to click back on when in the room because we take attendance frequently throughout the evening. We also do cold calls on everybody looking at that participant window. The little hand palm is for you to raise your hand if you have a question. Again, you have to click back on it to pull your hand back down. And finally, a polling tool lets the presenter ask you a yes or no question. I don't think we're using that one tonight, but you never know, and it's good to know where it is. During the evening, we will expect you to participate by talking with the mic and or writing. You have all of these tools on the screen available to you, but I'm going to review only the text tool that has the big yellow check by it. There are 2 choices for that tool, the one with lines that types a paragraph, and we've put the universal red line sign drawn on it to not use it, or the one that types a single line. We prefer you use the single line as we can move those single lines around easier on the screen than we can paragraphs. However, watch the screen because it's easy to run off the screen. Once you click on a text tool, you get more choices for font size and font color. Don't be afraid to fool around with these tools at the appropriate times. It's how we share online, and sharing online is how we learn together as a group. The other tools on this screen are pretty self-explanatory. Feel free to try them out when using the whiteboard. If you need to take a picture of the screen, our next slide will show you how. Screenshots tonight can be helpful. You might see something tonight that you want to take a picture of for quick reference, or maybe one of the mentor's presenters will suggest that you take a screenshot. Some people do it of this particular page for future reference. At the close of the session tonight, we will let you have access to all the screens, so that's another opportunity for screenshots. If you look at the left, it's the max. It shows you how to do it. Command-Shift-3, that takes the whole screen. Command-Shift-4 gives you little crosshairs, and you pull it around the part you want to copy. And on a PC, they just give you a key for that. So just click on that key and take the picture. And finally, look up at your screen near the top. That is where you will see the timer when we have timed activities. For now, it's a blank gray rectangle right now. You will need to be aware of this timer whenever it's on, especially when in breakout rooms, as you have a limited amount of time to accomplish the work while in those rooms. What room, you ask? Well, tonight you're going to have 3 choices, either K2, 3-5, or secondary 612. When it comes time, we will show you how to move into those rooms. Okay, that's it for your tech tips for now. I'm going to turn you over to Carol Giroux, one of the 3 instructors of record, and the pool coordinator for all the courses we offer. She will tell you about tonight's course. Carol?
Thanks, Jan. A warm welcome to our 3rd expansion forum of the year, dealing with effective reading strategies for informational text. I'm Carol Giroux. I'm in my 8th year as an Alaska statewide mentor. Having spent 35 plus years in the classroom, always with an eye to improving my practice, I join you in learning the content tonight for delivering effective reading strategies for informational text. We're so lucky to have some of Alaska's very own statewide mentors sharing their reading expertise with us this evening. They will each introduce themselves to you as they talk about these reading strategies, as will your 3 instructors of record. Hal and I are the expansion forum coordinators for all 8 topics presented yearly. Your questions can be directed to either one of us or Jan Littlebear, the other instructor of record. First, our agenda for this evening. As you can see on the agenda, we have a few housekeeping items to cover first. Our agenda, standards, facilitator names, norms, and outcomes for this evening. Then Liz will take you through tonight's connector, and all three facilitators, Karen, Liz, and Kathleen, will be working on tonight's learning segments, discussing teaching strategies for before, during, and after reading informational text. Jan will share some cultural connections and how we'll make sure you are taking care of yourself as a professional. Finally, as always, we'll be asking you to provide a reflection to be posted by 9 p.m. tonight. Please note it is important that you use your graphic organizer to capture notes throughout the evening, as the graphic organizer will be included with your reflection. The Alaska Statewide Mentor Project uses Alaska's 8 teaching standards in our work with you. These are listed for you on the screen. By way of Standard 3, we also embed the 5 cultural standards for a total of 13 standards. These 13 standards use a common language and describe a shared vision for Alaska's teachers and the best practices that support them. Tonight, we're going to focus on Standard 2, student learning, as well as touch upon 4, 5, 6, and 8. As we work with our Alaska State standards, we know that there is a crossover, and we would like to note that these standards are woven together during the entire reading process. Standard 2 applies student learning. A teacher understands how students learn and develop and applies that knowledge in the teacher's practice. Please take a quick glance at this slide. As educators, we have a ton of acronyms. We have listed just a few here. If one shows up that you don't know what it is, click on that hand palm that Jan told you about earlier. That raises your hand and tells the presenter that you have a question. Or type in the chat box asking what an acronym is, and one of us will respond. As part of tonight's forum, we'll model best practices, teaching strategies by integrating some of the 49 techniques from Doug Lemob's book, Teach Like a Champion. We've listed 8 of his 49 techniques on the slide, and we will hit some of these in tonight's presentation. The first technique we will be modeling is cold call number 22. So, will Raymond Joseph please grab the mic and read through the rest of our list? All right, not hearing from Raymond. I'll do it myself. Double plan, number 10. Name the steps, number 13. Everybody writes, 26. Entry routines, 28. Wait time, 25. Tight transitions, number 30. And joy factor, number 46. All right, notice how up in the right-hand corner of this slide, there's an orange background with blue text. That's how each technique will show up on the slide tonight, to simply remind you we are modeling a particular technique from this book, Teach Like a Champion. The names of tonight's facilitators are on the slide, along with each of their backup people. All are mentors with the Alaska Statewide Mentor Project, and each will introduce her or himself when working with you tonight. Our collaborative norms. Let's begin. Let's keep in mind that the collaborative norms that will guide our discussion tonight. Equity of voice means both allowing everyone an opportunity to add to the discussion and being willing to contribute to that conversation, either orally or in writing on the whiteboards. Active listening, let's do our best to listen mindfully, staying focused on what others are saying without thinking about how we're going to respond. Respect for different perspectives. Let's honor and learn from one another's unique views by listening and considering experiences and viewpoints that may or may not parallel our own. Safety and confidentiality. When sharing personal experiences and observations in an effort to respect privacy and retain confidentiality, please withhold names of specific sites or people. And it looks like we have a question from, I don't see a hand raised. Maybe you can ask the question in the chat box. And our last one, online etiquette. We ask that you please state your name before you speak into the microphone when you finish, remembering to click off the mic when you finish talking. The chat box is available for questions, comments, or to let us know if you run into any glitches with the audio or when recording on the whiteboard. By definition, a forum means an open discussion, and because of this, we have an expectation that you will participate to a high degree by sharing your thoughts and ideas verbally and or in writing on the whiteboard. Our expected outcomes for this evening are that you will better understand the reading process, recognize the importance of vocabulary instruction, practice strategies for reading informational text, and use at least one new reading strategies during instruction in the coming week. I will now pass the talk button to your first facilitator for this evening, Liz Will, and she'll take us through the connector. Liz?
Hi, this is Liz Will, and it's my 4th year as an ASMP mentor. Currently, I work with teachers in the districts of Dillingham, Southwest Region, Cussbuck, we have a couple participants from that region tonight, and Sitka, my hometown. Before becoming a mentor, I taught social studies and French at Sitka High School. I also have experience working in ESL. So most of my career has been focused on helping students acquire another language. Reading strategies are critical for language learners, and we should remember all of us are language learners. For our connector this evening, we'll start with a journal write to capture your prior knowledge and thoughts. We'll be using Lemav's technique 26, Everybody Writes. This is where you set students up for engagement by giving the opportunity to reflect first in writing before having a discussion. Your students are involved in a variety of types of reading in school. Think about how informational text reading is similar to and different from reading a story. We'll give you 3 minutes to jot down ideas on how teaching reading is different if the text is literary, fictional, or informational. Please be ready to share at least one of your ideas with the whole group. Are there any questions? I'll turn off the mic for a second. You could raise your hand or type in the chat box. Okay, could we have the timer set for 3 minutes and reflect on teaching reading if the text is informational or literary? Please take a few seconds to complete your last thought. Here we'll have a share out. Please type some of your ideas on the screen using the Big A tool. And my wing, Lindy Kin in Fairbanks, will help keep the board straight as you post ideas. We're using Lemav's wait time technique to tap into the power of ideas. With this technique, the teacher delays a few seconds after asking the question and before calling on a student. So type out some ideas, things you've seen, things you've tried. Great. Remember to use that big A tool and not the small a with the lines. So you've had a few minutes to consider some of the similarities and differences between teaching with informational text and teaching with stories or fiction. Now we'd like to hear your ideas. So I will cold call, and when you hear your name, you can, or a reference to the idea that you posted, I'll get off the talk button, you can press the talk button and share your ideas with the group. Christina Carlson, could you share one of your ideas, please?
This is Christina. I focused my little paragraph on the differences between reading levels at nonfiction text and fiction text and how there's a wide discrepancy.
Thanks, Christina. How about Lois Walker? Could you share an idea? Maybe one you see on the board or maybe one that you've tried.
So I was thinking about what kind of questions you would ask for comprehension, how they would be different. I think you would use story cues for what might happen next for fictional, and how students can relate with the informational text.
Thanks, Lois. You're leading us right into some of our topics for this evening. And maybe let's try one more. Someone wrote on the board, students' interest harder to keep with informational. Would someone like to pick up the mic and maybe speak to that?
I offer a thought on that. I mean, students like to read about dragons and wizards and things like that, fantastical creatures, and there doesn't tend to be a lot of that in informational text unless it's specifically about that topic, and it's kind of hard to drill down into very specific fantasy type interests like that.
Great. So I think we all have that feeling that it will have to maybe put some strategies in place to keep that interest, get that interest, help students get into that informational text. Great ideas. Thank you for sharing. So take a minute to read through this list that highlights some of the key similarities and differences. Don't worry if you can't get all this down in your notes. At the end of tonight's session, all slides will be available for your reference. For those taking the course, the session will be accessible as a recording on Blackboard for your continued use. We know that when teaching reading, both nonfiction and fiction, readers need to be able to decode, make meaning, and apply a variety of reading strategies. Under differences, we see that nonfiction often includes vocabulary that is specific to a subject area and includes text features such as sidebars, tables, bold words, and headings. These are features which students need to learn to use in order to increase their comprehension of the text. For our next learning piece, Karen will get us thinking about what makes informational reading difficult.
Thank you, Liz. Good evening. I'm Karen Doyle, a lifelong Alaskan, currently residing in West Villa. I'm retired from the Mat-Su School District after over 23 years of teaching. The reading issues my young learners face prompted my master's work in literacy at the University of Alaska Southeast. Now, as a fourth-year statewide mentor, I work with first and second-year teachers in the Northwest Arctic. I'm delighted to be a co-presenter with my mentor colleagues tonight. So tonight we're going to think about what makes informational reading or informational text challenging. As you read this slide, use your metacognitive skills to think about the steps you use to process this information. I'll give you a few moments to read it. Editor Harvey Smokey Daniels of Comprehension Going Forward began his discussion of informational text, reading, and comprehension in this way. I'll continue with his words, and I quote, "Now, let me try to read your mind. A minute ago, you entered this passage with your normal reading confidence, but soon ran into a bit of difficulty. This bit of text does not cough up meaning so easily. Perhaps you noticed yourself immediately puzzling over the three headings, trying to figure out what genre of text you were about to read. Or maybe you scanned the passage and were daunted by all those goofy fonts and all that symbolic language ahead. Because you were monitoring your comprehension, you could feel that your understanding might be in jeopardy, and so you started making specific mental moves to improve your chances." End quote. Mr. Daniel goes on to explain these specific mental moves that may have included making connections, accessing prior knowledge in text schema, inferring, visualizing, and more. You may have stopped and reread portions of the text. Maybe you started asking questions. In short, you had many tools in your comprehension toolbox to help you attempt to understand the text. Many of our students haven't developed strategies or their own tools for processing challenging text. In many cases, they'll shut down as a consequence. Tonight, we are going to give you some strategies for teaching your students tools they can use to tackle challenging text. Kathleen will introduce Learning 1.
Well, not hearing Kathleen's voice, this is Carol again. Kathleen and her partner Marie and Gayak will be working together, and they are UGO mentors with the Fairbanks School District, and they both have backgrounds in language and literacy instruction and many years teaching in elementary schools. While Fairbanks has been home for 30 plus years for both of us. Marie began her Alaska residency in Tooksuk Bay, while Kathleen's family lived in Dillingham during those early years. So they appreciate this opportunity to connect with rural and urban colleagues. And I'll get off the mic and see if Kathleen can get on.
Hi, folks. I'm showing that I'm on, Carol, so let's hope folks can hear me. This is the screen the one that you have before you is the should be the graphic organizer that we created for tonight. So we've chunked this reading into 3 sections, and I know that those will be familiar to you. The before and during and after sections. And for each of these, what we've done is match our Alaska Anchor standards. So you'll see on this screen that when we're working with informational text, we begin with craft and structure to focus on tasks that give students an overview and deepen their understanding prior to reading. We'll follow the same format as we present strategies for during and after the reading process. This is the graphic organizer that we created for tonight, and hopefully you have it before you. But if not, I'll remind you that you can take a screenshot on a Mac that's 3 keys, the Command-Shift-3 for a full screen, or Command-Shift-4 to frame the picture, and the PC has its own screenshot key. We'd like you to use this organizer for note-taking, but more importantly, you will need it also for yourself because you'll be asked to turn it in later in the evening. It will become a piece of your reflection. Notice that the during reading section is matched with our Alaska Standards key ideas and details, and the after reading section with our standards for integration. And we'll go back to Karen now. She's going to talk to us about teaching practices we might use before reading informational text.
Thanks, Kathleen. We're practicing the Lemma strategy of cold call. We know cold call reinforces engagement. So I'd like Pamela, would you please read the screen for us?
So before reading strategies, first identify text features, preview text, guided preview, interactive sentences, word clouds. Another bullet item is to build vocabulary.
Thank you, Pamela. And those are just some of the strategies. We have more that we'll be sharing. And let's examine these strategies more closely. Our first before reading strategy is to look for text features. Informational texts have features that are designed to support readers by making access to content reader-friendly. On this screen, take a look at some of the supports we use in nonfiction. When we model how to use these features, a student might realize, for example, that taking time to examine a labeled diagram before reading can make comprehension easier. We can think of a question we have about the topic and check the index or table of contents to find our starting point, or we might skim the headings to find a starting point. Unlike fiction, we don't always start on page 1 when reading nonfiction. Or we might use a scavenger hunt strategy to have students search pages for headings, captions, or bold-faced words and ask what makes these important to the topic. We will emphasize that bold-faced text is a signal to draw attention to important words and ideas. Similar to a picture walk for fiction, these preview ideas familiarize students with content prior to reading. You might want to take a screenshot or add notes in your organizer before we change screens. Here are some free resources illustrating text features. These are available on Teachers Pay Teachers. The website is on the slide there. Kathleen will now introduce 2 activities to familiarize students with text before reading.
So one of the strategies that we thought might be helpful would be one called interactive sentences, and you can see the steps on the screen there before you. Each student starts with a fact from one of the, your nonfiction passages, and then you partner them up so that student A would read her sentence to partner B, and partner B would listen and paraphrase, And then partner B would take his turn to read while partner A listens and paraphrases. And then students move to new partners and they share the same sentence again. So what they're doing is students are getting to hear a variety of sentences that will be in that nonfiction passage. And when they hear those, they can gain some pre-understanding or prior knowledge of the content before they begin reading it as a group. And thinking about activating prior knowledge, one of the most powerful strategies we use to guide students through informational text is front-loading vocabulary. So what you'll see on this screen is a word cloud. How many of you use Wordle or a site that generates a vocabulary screen like this for you? Just raise your hand if you've used a site to build a word cloud. Great. Looks like plenty of you have tried it. And more. That's wonderful. Well, Maria and I were just playing around with this, and she grabbed a sheet on equity, and this is what we came up with. We did put the sites down below if you want to try it and you haven't had a chance to before. But what you see here is a screen that is the text in graphic form, and so those of you who have done it, I know you know that those bold words are the ones that were used most frequently in the passage that we chose. And I tried the ABC site as well that's on the screen, and that was a really simple way to translate text into a graphic as well. The Teaching Channel video site that we've given you here is a short clip of a high school teacher, and he's explaining how he uses the site as a warm-up to introduce academic vocabulary prior to his teaching a new science unit. I'm sure you're probably already thinking of ways to use it in your own classroom, and I encourage you to check out these free resources. Liz, will you speak to the group about the importance of building vocabulary, please?
Thanks, Kathleen. We felt the best way to end our Before Reading section was by touching on a very important component, the intentional teaching of vocabulary. We know that word knowledge is important to reading comprehension. Research also documents its importance to overall school success. The National Reading Panel compiled research on effective vocabulary instruction. Two of the key findings are students need repetition and multiple exposures to target words in a variety of contexts to learn how they can be used. And students need to actively engage with the vocabulary beyond the limited context of the dictionary definition. They need to know how the word relates to other words. One intentional strategy is using a word wall in the classroom. This strategy is widely used no matter the grade level. Note here the many creative ways teachers use word walls in their own classrooms. A word wall can be used in a variety of activities. On this slide is an example of an electronic interactive word wall created using Padlet. Here students have posted vocabulary showing use of prefixes. We'd like to hear from you about how you have used word walls to intentionally teach vocabulary. Would you take a moment to think about how you've used word walls, what's worked for you, what's been effective? So I'll get off the talk button and either pick up the mic and tell us how you use word walls, or type your idea in the chat box. And those of you listening or reading in the chat box, add to your notes anything that you might be interested in trying for your own reading instruction.
Hey, this is Susie. I just started the word wall this year, actually, and it's been working really nicely. I work in Cheevac, Alaska, so they have a very limited vocabulary. And what I've noticed with my word wall is that they're starting to use the words more in their writing and just in their everyday speech, I guess, or speaking. Sorry, I kind of came out weird. But it's been helping a lot with that, and it's been really nice to hear some different words thrown in instead of the usual kid chat. So it's, yeah.
This is Toby and Togiak. Last year I had an issue with students. They were fairly negative, and they said that everything was boring, and so I finally got tired of it, and so we came up with, we made a bulletin board in my room, and it said words that mean boring, and so every time someone said boring, they then had to go and get a thesaurus and find an alternative word, and then do a dictionary, then they had to do an index card. But by the end of the year, we had students who were they were able to articulate in very precise terms exactly their level of boredom. So it was pretty impressive. We even had a student who came up with ennui. So it was something they enjoyed doing, and also they learned some new words to complain with.
Here's Valerie. I'm on Christie's. Valerie Dawn. I'm on Christie's sign-in, but I use my letter characters from the curriculum and incorporate it in with my word wall. I have them posted up, and then I put my words underneath to keep it tied in with the curriculum.
Ideas, really working with vocabulary and helping students take ownership and internalize those words. And I hope people have been watching the chat box, because there are a lot of great ideas there. And remember, you can scroll back through those if you need to go back and try and read them all, because you guys have generated a lot of great ideas. Thank you. So at the bottom of the slide are 2 web links: creating and using effective word walls, and a site that lets you create electronic interactive word walls. We've also included a couple tutorials for using Padlet, and you can find others on YouTube. Just search, and that's a free resource. Next slide, please. This screen outlines Marzano's 6-step process for direct vocabulary instruction. Steps 1, 2, and 3 are sequential. The image on the slide is an example of a foldable using this process. Students would draw their own image and write the definition in their own words. Both of these steps are key in building understanding. The third block could be used for a word wall. Steps 4, 5, and 6 can be used at any time. These steps are important for helping students recall information, internalize the word, and build context. Another common practice is to use vocabulary notebooks. Let's look at an example. Here's a sample page. If you want to raise your hand, smiley face, thumbs up, how many of you use vocabulary notebooks? Great. I'm hearing a lot of pings. Great. So thanks. Good to see hands raised. If you'd like a reproducible version of this notebook page, check out the Marzano website. ASMP has Marzano's books available in our mentor library. Ask your mentor if you'd like to borrow vocabulary for the Common Core or vocabulary games for the classroom. I know some districts are using these, encouraging and giving copies to their teachers. See if your own library has copies for your use. Included is a web link to a list of sites where you can find more ideas for building your students' vocabulary. Next, Karen will share what research shows about vocabulary instruction.
Thank you, Liz. While we know that vocabulary growth takes place mainly in social settings where conversation is the vehicle, as educators, we must provide opportunities for this growth in school settings. Let's review the key points from Marzano to facilitate this growth. We're going to use the talk button to read and comment on these statements about direct vocabulary instruction. And again, we're going to practice cold call. So please pick up the microphone by clicking the talk button when your name is called, and remember to click it again to turn it off. Corey, will you start us off by reading the first bullet and give us your interpretation, and then call on somebody else to do the same for the next bullet? If you're called on and you need a helping hand, look to your lifelines, the other participants in the forum. Anyone is free to raise a hand to help out. Corey?
All right, the first bullet point is that vocabulary is not necessarily based on dictionary definitions. What that means to me is that words in different contexts can have, and we actually just studied this, shades of meaning that may vary greatly from what a printed dictionary or an online dictionary may say. It helps our students learn the subtleties of the English language and really help them build their vocabulary to dig deep and not just limit them to what the dictionary says a word means. For the second bullet point, I would like to call on, trying to find a name I haven't heard yet, Gabriel Bailey.
Okay. Hopefully you guys can hear me. And hopefully you guys don't hear Sesame Street in the background. I'm babysitting tonight. Let's see. This involves linguistic and non-linguistic representation. How I do this in the classroom is when we learn new science vocabulary, I always have my students draw a picture that also corresponds with the vocabulary. So some students learn with words, some students learn with pictures, some people learn somewhere in between. And I would like to call on Sarah Menigan, please.
The next bullet is give students multiple exposures to a term. I interpret this as not only should the student be exposed to its root, its meaning, and its current context, but the student should be held accountable for using it. I do this in my classroom with SAT vocabulary. Not only do they have to participate with a picture image illustrating the word, but they have to use it repeatedly throughout the week. And I call on Christine Walker.
Okay, the next one is examine word parts and semantic features of the word. To me, that means looking at prefixes, suffixes, root words. Also looking possibly with older students, looking at the language the root word is derivative from. Let's see. For the next person, I will call on Joshua Smith.
All right, this is Joshua Smith. Involves discussion and wordplay. Well, I think that's, in my opinion, that's kind of obvious. Facilitating discussion about the newly acquired vocabulary. And like Sarah said earlier, when you then empower the students with new vocabulary, you then expect them to use it. And when they miss an opportunity to use it, I do this as a math teacher especially, when they miss an opportunity to use the proper vocabulary, you help them make corrections. Subtly say things like, instead of saying how many times does something go into the denominator, you choose words like, what is the greatest common factor? Stuff like that. Last person, let me choose someone whom I don't know. How about Katie Straley?
The last bullet says focuses on the most useful terms, which means that instead of trying to overload students with like 30 words, that you would narrow it down and focus on the most useful, which would be, you know, maybe a handful, like 5 or 6, depending on the age and the content at the time.
Thank you all for sharing. We love your interpretations, and it helps very much with the understanding of what we're talking about. I saw in the chat window for involves discussion and wordplay. I saw the name Amelia Bedelia, that character in some stories that are more for elementary students, but she was so fun getting confused with words and got herself into trouble many times because she misinterpreted key vocabulary. In just a moment, we're going to move into our breakout rooms, but first Jan will give directions for making that move. Jan?
Yes, you've got in front of you the screen that shows you, but first let me compliment everybody on cold call, using the talk button, turning it on and off, so we appreciate that. It's just as easy to move yourself in these rooms. You'll see on the screen it points to where the main room is. So you're going to click on that in a minute, and then there will be 3 room choices for you, either K2, 3.5, or 6.12. And you just click on that, and it will take you to that room, and your moderators will be in the room waiting for you. Are there any questions?
Vocabulary is the best single indicator of intellectual ability and an accurate predictor of success in school. While you're thinking about the quote on this screen, let's go ahead and move ourselves into grade level groups to practice a word sort game for building vocabulary.
Joshua, type in the chat room in the chat box what room you want to be in, and I'll put you in there. Samantha, same thing. If you either tell me with the mic or chat in the chat room and tell me what room, I can put you in there. Josh?
This is Josh. I thought I typed in to the chat room. Can you please move me to the 6 through 12 room? Thank you so much.
You did. I didn't have it scroll down. Get ready to move. Hey, Marilyn, we're in breakout rooms, so just put yourself in a room and enjoy. Allison, did you get kicked off again? I can put you in a room if you tell me which one.
Yeah, I got kicked off. I'm 4 through 6 band.
Do you want to be in 612 or 35?
Let's go 3-5.
Rebecca, we are in, oh, you put yourself in. Rebecca, that's got to be irritating. I'm so sorry.
It keeps logging me out and then logging me back in. I don't know what's going on. Maybe one of my colleagues is downloading a movie right now on the internet. I don't know.
Thanks for being patient and keep coming back on. Thanks, everyone, for getting back so quickly. It usually takes a minute or two for everyone to return, so we'll give it that. Kathleen, question mark?
Can you hear me? Okay. Welcome back. And we're back for the second part of our learning tonight, which is during reading. We'll be thinking about strategies that can be effectively used when we're reading a passage, an informational passage, and we're going to ground our learning again in our Alaska Anchor Standards. We're on key ideas and details, and you'll see those on your screen, 1, 2, and 3. When we think about key ideas and details and what that looks like in practice, we might ask, what do we do to promote close reading and encourage students to form opinions with textual support? Or we might ask, how do we help students process and elaborate on new information? Notice the language in these standards. Make inferences. Cite evidence. Summarize. Analyze. Let's think about teaching strategies we can use during informational reading to help our students make meaning. You'll notice in the second column of your organizer that we started a list of strategies to use during informational reading. You might have students make quick sketches and label diagrams to help them remember details. And I was just at a session with Claire and Tammy, Teachers for Teachers, and it was wonderful. They called it Sketch to Stretch. And it was just drawing what you understand, rereading, and then labeling the drawing. And I heard somebody tonight mention that as well, that he uses that in his classroom. Or you might use graphic organizers like thinking maps and flowcharts. Think about the ways that you've used those to help students visualize. Just a few off the top of my head are cause and effect, compare and contrast, sequencing, chronological order, problem and solution, and the list certainly goes on. Or you might set up partners for shared reading. This is so effective, and especially with informational text. We just need those pauses, and somebody mentioned that, I noticed on the whiteboard tonight as well. We need to pause to share and to process if we're going to make informational text meaningful. But one of the things we put on this was just using sticky notes. And we put that down as a strategy because think about how many ways you've used those. You know, you might have used them for accountability. You might have used them as a group share. I know a couple of the groups tonight for their list group label, they mentioned they might use sticky notes so they could move those words around and group them. They work great for movable detail notes. And one of the things that we could do with that then is to identify main ideas. Or, you know, students might use them, and I've used them, I know when we were reading lit books, just use them as stop signs with kids when they were confused and they needed to reflect or ask a question, just sticky note it. We'd like to give you a chance tonight to watch teachers practice reading strategies. On a recent blog, literacy expert Timothy Shanahan listed 4 strategies that have a strong research record, and those were visualizing, summarizing, monitoring comprehension, and questioning. So when we give you a chance to watch some teachers practice these strategies, Liz is going to tell you how we're going to go in, how that will work for us. Liz, would you help people know about that, please? Thanks.
Well, this is Lindy, and I don't hear Liz, so I'll jump in for her. We're asking you to choose 2 videos to watch. Giving students choice is always a great reading strategy to keep students reading. The links are in the email you received this week from your mentor. While you watch, take note of strategies that you might be successful with your students. When you come back at the end of 15 minutes, you'll be sharing in your grade level groups. Please move to your grade level room by 15 minutes. Maybe we could have a timer set for that. And I think we're ready to start. So if you're not able to access any of the videos, you can use the live link in the chat box. I just put it in there. Let me see if I can get it to go. There it goes. And there you can find access to a variety of videos.
Everybody, you need to go to your rooms now. I feel like a mother talking to her children. I don't mean to, but go to your breakout rooms, and you're going to have 6 or 7 minutes in there to debrief with your facilitator.
When we think about integrating knowledge and ideas, we need to ask, how do we support learners with strategies that can be used after reading nonfiction text to continue the process of making meaning? Look at the Anchor Focus Standards 7, 8, and 9 above, and you'll see that these involve higher order thinking skills, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. As Kylene Beers reminds us, it is rigor, not rigor mortis. Now we'll go back to Kathleen.
Thanks, Liz. That's a timely reminder for all of us. And the message on this screen is from Doug Fisher. This is the challenge that our new reading standards present us. Reading the passage closely and asking text-dependent questions, and I saw that on several whiteboards, so I know you're doing it. What we need to do is compel that rereading and foster a discussion, because we want our students to be empowered to try and read. And what we want them to try and read is that which really feels unreadable. You know, not every text is worth close reading, or we really would be promoting rigor mortis. But a close reading strategy for short passages, and usually from primary source documents, that's what we're talking about. And, you know, you might have seen it on video clips that you just viewed. When we were in our small rooms, Mary Ann mentioned a kindergarten teacher that was using a close reading piece. So we're beginning the process in those really early grades to develop readers who question the text and read critically at this informational age. And Fisher tells us that close reading is a careful and purposeful rereading of a text. Students really focus on what the author had to say, on what the author's purpose was, on what the words mean, and what the structure of the text tells us. That close reading requires that the students struggle a little and they're forced to think. The point of close reading is to have evidence from your reading that you can use in your discussion and your writing. And the Fry and Fisher book, Rigorous Reading, that you see on the corner of your screen, is available from our ASMP library. And each chapter in the text has several video clips of students and teachers working through the close reading process. And you don't even need the book, because you can go on that site and those video clips are accessible. So you can access those video clips at the website on the bottom of the screen shown here. Tim Shanahan explains it this way. The first reading is really about figuring out what a text says to us. So, you know, the student should be able to answer questions about key ideas and details. And the second reading would go deeper. The questions drive them back into the text. How did the text work? What literary devices were used? How effective were they? What was the quality of the evidence? How was the data presented? Why did the author choose this word or that word? Was the meaning of a key term consistent, or did it change across the text? And on a third reading, we might ask students, what does the text mean? What was the author's purpose? What was the author's point of view? How does this text connect to other texts you know? When we have a deep understanding of a text or what it says and how it works, we're in a position to critically evaluate the text and connect ideas. Close reading is an intensive analysis of a text in order to come to terms with what it says, how it says, and what it means. So on your graphic organizer, you'll see that this search for deeper meaning might take the direction of searching for evidence to draw logical inferences from the text. And it was really interesting. Mary Ann brought that up in our small group, and she said the kindergarten teacher was using the word infer to have the students go back into the text. Or it might take the direction of making comparisons between and among texts, or forming opinions based on evidence from the text. Take a moment to think about strategies in this section on integration of knowledge and ideas. And I see that we don't have determine author purpose or point of view on this list, so you might want to add those on your graphic organizer for tonight. Fisher gives us this frame for looking closely at the tasks we give students. I'm going to use cold call and ask Mary Ann, would you read this for us, please? And I'm not hearing Mary Ann. Let's try Christina. Could you read for us?
Well, hey, this is Betty Walters. I'll read it. After reading, text-dependent tasks should require the reader to return to the text, to use evidence to support his or her ideas or claims, to move from text explicit to text implicit knowledge, to analyze, evaluate, and create.
Thanks, Betty. So the types of questions we ask students influence how they read a text. If we only ask recall questions, they're going to learn to read for that type of information. But we're asking our students these days to go beyond recall. We're asking them to draw inferences, to justify answers, and to defend opinions. Text-dependent questioning is often listed as a major strategy for improving literacy achievement. But anytime an idea becomes a buzzword, we're in danger of losing sight of what that idea really means. So if we view text-dependent questions as simply those that have right there answers, we set the bar too low, and we create a false sense of rigor. These tasks should require students to locate evidence within the text and use this knowledge to form opinions and make connections that are informed and meaningful. Keeping in mind that these tasks should require the reader to return to the text for support and require higher level reasoning skills, here's an example from a primary classroom. This teacher made Marzano questioning sticks to guide readers to ask higher level thinking questions. And this slide is from an example from a high school English classroom. This teacher took the Common Core standards for English language arts and broke them into 6 parts. Check out video clips that we have down there on the bottom of your screen if you'd like to see skinning the standards into 6 buckets. And she works through this process with her class. Both of these teachers have the same goal, to empower our students to become independent thinkers and active constructors of meaning. And one more resource as we consider the tasks our students will be asked to perform on summative assessments. This appendix has short examples of text students should be mastering at grade level, kindergarten through high school, with sample performance tasks. If you'd like to see examples of what students might be asked to do to demonstrate mastery of the standards, this site would be worth checking. As well as informational text, you'll find stories and drama and poetry with tasks for each genre. They're leveled K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on through high school. And at the higher grades, informational text is available by subject matter. So on the screen, I just chose a couple of sample performance tasks from the 4th, 5th grade section to share. Notice the language in these tasks. Students are being asked to find evidence to support the author's claims in the first task and to identify the overall structure of the text in the second, and to use that structure to compare and contrast 2 reading passages. If you're interested in checking passages and tasks at your grade level, use the link we've provided. Karen, would you wrap up our after reading section for our learning tonight?
Sure, and thank you, Kathleen, for those resources. As we approach the end of our forum, we want to share 3 ideas to use as after reading strategies, mainly for our older students, grade 4 and up. Described in the Lemma book, Teach Like a Champion, which we've referred to several times this evening as the post-reading strategy or the post-reading technique called summarizing. Many of us ask our students to do this, but we don't actually teach them how. But it's a great way to have students effectively process text. It works best when students are forced to prioritize content rather than retell what they've read. Adding an element of group discussion can take it one step further. Best practice in reading includes a social dimension, meaning students need time to discuss text among their peers and interact with the content. They need to become deep thinkers about the text to fully understand it. Why not have students work together to summarize text in small groups? asking questions like, can you describe the chapter by recapping its 3 most important events? Can you summarize the author's 2 major arguments in support of his thesis? Another strategy for students to effectively summarize is to ask them to an ever-decreasing word limit. Lemov's example is summarize the chapter in 50 words. Okay, now summarize it in 1 sentence of 15 words or less. Exit slips are effective for finding out if students have learned the gist of a passage and where confusion remains. On a slip of paper, each student simply finishes the responses, one thing I learned or one question I have. Not only can this be used as an after-reading strategy, but it can also be used after any content has been presented. This is information that can help you guide instruction the next day. More information about exit slips can be found in Daniels and Zemmelton's Subject Matter, Every Teacher's Guide to Content Area Reading. The last strategy we want to share is what we as ACT Expansion Forum presenters do often, and that is a reflection, i.e. reflecting on what you've learned and how you will apply the content. Be sure to add these ideas to your graphic organizer. And are there others ideas that you'd like to add? Go ahead and post those, and I'll take about a minute and release the mic if you'd like to share.
A fun thing you could do after the reading is do like a question and answer session. You could have students write down questions as they read and have them answer each other's questions, or you could answer them, do things like that.
These are great ideas. Thank you for sharing your strategies for after reading. Which ones interest you the most? Write them down on your graphic organizer or take a screenshot. And can we have the next slide, please? These next 2 slides are additional resources. Again, you might want to take screenshots of them. Our goal tonight was to weave strategic thinking into the new shifts in our state standards for teaching reading. We looked at those strategies from the vantage of what we do before, during, and after reading nonfiction text. Thank you for your active participation tonight.
No one knows the importance of vocabulary more than Hank the cow dog, as he reminds us with these immortal words. Don't take anything for granted, because that's what tombstones are made of.
That brings you to me, folks. It's the cultural connections moment, and those screenshots might come in handy. I'm going to move rather quickly. I'm in my 7th year with the project, 25 in education, and I'm coming direct to you tonight from Fairbanks. My role with the Mentor Project and this specific expansion forum coursework is to make sure we all remember to integrate culture into our instruction. Culture connects content to the learner. Let's glance at the cultural standards. The screen shows them all to you. They're part of your evaluation. Everybody's becoming pretty familiar with them. Standard 2 of the teacher standards applies student learning, and a teacher understands how students learn and develop and applies that knowledge in teacher practice. That's how we reach diverse students. Next slide, please. I'm going to ask that the mentors tonight, this is a quote from a University of Illinois professor to sum up why culture is important when it comes to all learning. I'm going to ask a mentor to read this for me, please. So, Cindy, would you read that to everyone? I know you can read it, but I like to hear it. So, Cindy?
Effective literacy instruction builds upon the cultural and linguistic backgrounds, ways of making meaning, and prior knowledge that all children bring to the classroom. Such instruction also acknowledges the important role of culture in language and literacy learning. Understanding and respecting the array of different cultures and languages represented in their classrooms helps educators adopt strategies for teaching literacy that will encourage and support student achievement.
Thanks, Cindy. We're always calling on the teachers to talk, so I thought for this last part I would get the mentors to do it for us. The website where I found this quote concludes with, "It is as important to know the student as it is to know the subject matter." And that begs the question, how do we do that? Well, I've got six tips to show you how. And I'm going to ask the mentors. Abby, I'm going to start with you, and then I'm just going to ask you to read the first one and then call on another mentor, and we're just going to go through them. And yes, I know you can all read them, but it's another thing that will be good auditorily. So, Abby?
Number one, learn about your own culture. Become aware of how the influence of your own culture, language, social interests, goals, cognitions, and values could prevent you from learning how you could best teach your students of culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. Also, understanding and respecting your own cultural roots can help you respect your students' cultural roots. And Karen Doyle.
Okay, number 2, learn about your students' culture. Understand how your students' culture affect their perception, self-esteem, values, classroom behavior, and learning. Use that understanding to help your students feel welcomed, affirmed, respected, and valued. And Marie?
Understand your students' linguistic traits. Learn how students' patterns of communication and various dialects affect their classroom learning and how second language learning affects their acquisition of literacy. Let's see. Hal?
Use this knowledge to inform your teaching. Let your knowledge of your students' diverse cultures inform your teaching. This, along with a nicely caring attitude, increases student participation and engagement. Sue McIntosh?
Use multicultural books and materials to foster cross-cultural understanding. Sensitively use multicultural literature, especially children's literature, to honor students' culture and foster cross-cultural understanding. Be open to a variety of instructional strategies as students' cultures may make certain strategies, such as competitive games or getting students to volunteer information, uncomfortable for them. Kirsty? Number 6, know about your students' home and school relationships. Collaborate with parents and caregivers on children's literacy development, and don't rely on preconceived notions of the importance of literacy within your students' families.
Thank you, mentors. And that takes us to the last slide for the culture, which shows you all 6 at once. You're going to need to pick one of these to talk about in your reflection tonight, so be thinking about that. And now, to be sure you're taking care of yourself as a balanced professional, I'm going to turn the talk button over to Hal. Hal?
Well, thank you, Jan. And good evening, everyone. My name is Hal Neese, and I live in Homer. I taught 33 years for the Kenai District as both a middle school and a high school science teacher. And I'm now in my 7th year as an Alaska statewide mentor. Alaskan Teaching Standard number 8 is what I'll speak to, developing as a professional. Now, this is a very important standard, and the Mentor Project believes it's vital to keep a balanced professional life. And so tonight, I'd like to focus on the importance of creating joy in the classroom. One of your reflective submissions tonight will be to state how you have fun in your teaching. Now, Mike Anderson has written quite a well-known book, and in his research titled A Well-Balanced Teacher, he states, and I'm just quoting him here, in these days of accountability, failing schools, and high-stakes testing, the idea of making sure that teachers are having fun at school might seem quaint or perhaps to some even irresponsible. I argue that it's essential for teachers to enjoy their daily work. After all, if we can't enjoy teaching, how will students ever enjoy learning? That's a good quote when you think about it. So whether you've been in the classroom less than a year or 5 years or 50 years, it's critical that you enjoy what you do. And Mr. Anderson has even more to say on this subject. Anderson refers to fun in the classroom as both simple and lighthearted, but also as deep engagement. And he refers to it in his book as the joy factor. Now, it's important for us not to miss those funny antics in the classroom or forget to laugh at a comical comment that we hear from students or even that pleasurable conversation you might have with a colleague down the hall. So just keep in mind that this kind of fun is healthy and it should not be ever thought of as frivolity in any way. Here's something to think about. What's more, in their book, Play, Creativity, and Lifelong Learning, Why Play Matters for Both Kids and Adults, the game designers, theorist Bernie D. Cofen and psychologist Dr. Gene Siegel have referenced, and they've discovered that positive thinkers actually live 7.5 years longer than pessimists. Now, there might be teachers out there that warn you not to smile before December, and we haven't even got there yet. But really try to avoid being one of those. One researcher has recently published 11 joy factors, and let's just take a quick look at those on the next slide. In an article titled Joy in School from Education Leadership Magazine, Stephen Wolk, who is an assistant professor of education at Northeastern Illinois University, he lists 11 essential steps in implementing joy in our teaching. And I encourage you to read the entire article for your own information. The citation you can see is on this slide, but I'm just going to refer to factors 1, 2, 9, and 11. Now, joy 1 is finding the pleasure in learning itself. And you might ask yourself, well, why do people learn? And I don't mean just inside school. I mean learning as a part of everyday life. Well, learning basically gives us great pleasure. And this kind of learning is often, but not always, motivated from within ourselves. You know, we're just really basically programmed for learning very early on in our experience as human beings. Joy 2 gives students choice, and this is a particularly effective way to increase the joy in a classroom, because outside of school, when you think about it, children are free to pursue their interests, and you know, kids will do this naturally, and they'll do it with gusto. But just think about a typical 6-hour school day, and how much ownership do students actually have in their own learning? It's not surprising that often their interest in learning dissipates, and and we hear teachers complain of unmotivated students. By allowing student choice as often as possible in our daily lessons, joy in learning elevates greatly, as the students then take on more personal ownership in their own learning. Joy 9 is offer more gym and art classes, and we've seen some of that disappear. Howard Gardner, with his great work on multiple intelligences, has really helped us better appreciate the uniqueness of children. And he's spoken to the need to give students opportunities to use all their varied strengths and interests in the school day. You know, just one short example, and I saw it today, one way is to take a brain break periodically. Get your kids moving. I have a teacher that I saw that does GoNoodle.com. Kids love it, especially after they've worked hard. So, I mean, what's more naturally human than to want to move our bodies to music? Joy 11, having some fun together. This can be a more of a school-wide participation. You could have a school-wide t-shirt day, a school sleep-in, or a talent show. Outdoor field days are incredibly successful, and all these activities can help build relationships, which is really what it's all about. They help tear down the personal walls that often get built inside our schools, and they can foster just having a wonderful time together. So I just want to wrap up by saying teaching really can be a joyful experience. It should be, and I just hope you don't miss any of those golden opportunities that make that happen. Now, one more idea for having fun comes directly from me, and it might be fun for you too. I'll just share it briefly, and that's to make a collage about fun, one that illustrates how you have fun, and share it with your students, maybe in your own classroom or in the hallway. Then get your students to make a classroom fun collage themselves throughout the year, adding pictures. Have a camera hit. Everyone's got an iPhone these days, it seems like. And when they're having fun, someone says, hey, take a picture. Let's get that on our fun collage. You can have fun collecting evidence of fun in your own classroom, because it really is a part of your balanced life. So good luck with this strategy. And I hope you continue to build on this. And now we're going to wrap up for the evening. These were the 4 outcomes we've had tonight. Hopefully tonight's learning has informed you about the importance of the reading process and vocabulary, developing important before, during, and after strategies for reading informational text, and that you can implement at least one of these new reading strategies in your instruction, and hopefully right away after tonight. Now this slide shows you that we had a very packed agenda, and we promised to deliver this to you, and thanks to your active involvement, and you're a very active group of teachers tonight. Thank you very much. We managed to get it all in, and that's going to bring us to our reflection and our closure, which is our final slide for tonight. First, we just want to thank you all for your great participation in this informative forum on effective reading strategies for informational text, and we look forward to the continued conversations with your mentor and the close colleagues throughout the Blackboard Collaborative site, which is required participation beyond this evening. And that's really where we can learn from one another, so please use it. Well, based on what we've learned tonight, please reflect on the following 4 items. Number 1, which reading strategies fit your students and how will you use them in your classroom? And please, as was mentioned earlier, turn in your note-taking guide as a part of that reflection piece. Number 2, which of the 6 tips for teaching in a diverse classroom speaks to you and why? What Jan just shared with us. And 3, what I just alluded to, how do you have fun in the classroom? And try to list as many examples as you can. Now we're going to add a 4th one tonight, and this is going to continue for the rest of the forums we give. Would you please share with us where you were located for tonight's course, what city, village, or town for tonight's forum? Also, we suggest that you keep on all these reflections an archival copy, because you can submit this again at the end of the forums that we present in April. You'll be writing a 3 to 5 page paper, and they will be really helpful in getting that in so you can get full credit. Now, you might want to record your instructor's of records email now. Basically, if you're a first-year teacher at ECT, please send yours to Carol Giroux and also to your mentor. If you are a second-year teacher, please send yours to myself, Hal Neese, and also to your mentor. And for all the other participants tonight, please send your responses to Jan by 9 o'clock. And of course, the other assignments within the next 30 days according to the syllabus that she sent out. We would also like to invite you to our 4th expansion forum. This will conclude our 3rd tonight, and that's going to be held in December. It'll be entitled Engaging Students, Families, and Communities. It'll be held the same time, 6 to 8 p.m. It'll be on a Wednesday on December 9th, so you might make a note of that. We really hope you can join us. There will also be 4 new forums offered next semester starting in January. So thanks again. It's late. We ran a little bit over, but it was a powerful evening. We want to thank you for attending this engaging and professional forum that was titled Effective Reading Strategies. And I would also like to thank those incredible presenters tonight on this critical lesson that we all heard. So Karen, Kathleen, and Liz, thank you so much, along with Marie, Lindy, and Ann as your backups, and all the other mentors who were joined us tonight and were present to add to our rich conversations. So on behalf of Carol and Jan and myself, we want to thank you for your professionalism, dedication, and your truly heroic efforts, because you give your students that every day in the communities and the schools where you reside in Alaska. It's been quite an evening, so until next time, have a great rest of this week. And I'd like to end with what Garrison Keeler signs off on his show when he says, be well, do good work, and stay in touch. And I will just add, please don't forget to experience some elements of joy in that classroom that you are involved in. Good night, everyone, and thank you very much.
Al, or one of the other mentors, this is Valerie. I have a question as to, I couldn't catch it. It was, you guys were talking kind of fast earlier, but what's the copy of your note-taking guide as a piece of your reflection? And I haven't signed all the way up for the class yet, so I will be sending my email out, but I want to participate in the rest of the classes, so I'm in the process of getting that finished.
The note-taking guide is the graphic organizer that we sent out, and you saw it several times on slides tonight, before, during, and after, where you were taking notes, so it was like 3 columns. And let's just put you in touch with your instructor of record to answer the other questions. So put your email down in the chat room and we will take care of that. And then I want to tell everybody that I will leave this page up for 2 more hours, and we have clicked the slides in a way that you can now scroll through them yourself in case there were notes that you wanted to take and we were moving too quickly for you. So I'll turn off the mic to see if there's any more questions before your facilitators move themselves into their own debriefing room. So questions?
I want to say that I'm a first-year teacher, so Carol would be my instructor.
Okay, Kirsty, if you don't mind putting your email in the chat, and if you don't want to do that, Carol, can you put yours in there? And oh, I'll put it in for you so she can contact you. And are there any other questions from anybody?